All right, so deciphering, the process of deciphering.
So when I started, there were grammars and sign lists and dictionaries. Everything was marvelous. It was all basically deciphered. All you had to do was get on with learning it. But at the beginning, when the first tablets and bricks in cuneiform and stone inscriptions came to light, no one could read them. But they knew they were writing, but they didn't know how to read them. And what happened was, like you said before, with the Rosetta Stone, it was something directly comparable, because there was an inscription of one of the Persian kings halfway up a mountain in a place called Behistun, where this King Darius had written an account of his successful career in Elamite and in Babylonian and in Old Persian, Tri-Lingual version. And Old Persian, although it is obviously an archaic form of the language, Persian is still alive. It was still alive in the 19th century. So since the Old Persian was written in a very simple style of cuneiform, they deciphered it. They twigged it was Old Persian. They read it in Persian, and they read the names Dariush in Old Persian. And then suddenly somebody realized that the other two columns, about the same length,
Brilliant.
what do you know? And the thing is, it said, I am Darius, the great king of the world, king of the universe, son of diddly 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 diddly, grandson of diddly diddly diddly. So there's a whole paragraph with repeated things in the Persian, which they could understand. So what do you know? There are reiterated passages in the other two languages. So that was the key, that kind of the chisel that opened up cuneiform writing proper. And the thing was, they soon twigged that the language of the Babylonian was a Semitic tongue. And this was so important. I think the first word they discovered was the word for river, which is Naru in Akkadian and Nahar in Arabic and Aramaic. And when they realized that the word that corresponded to the Persian had this form, this was a gift of gold, because everybody immediately seized their Arabic and Hebrew dictionaries and started leafing through looking for words that would fit in the context. And they decipher this inscription in that sort of way. And of course, all the other inscriptions came in order, and there were lots and lots of difficulties which had to be resolved. But that's the basic thing. And without that trilingual, I don't know what would have happened. I mean, I suppose it's conceivable that in the very modern world, something might have happened. But as it was done by sheer brain power, by very, very clever persons, just doing it. And they cracked it. The Elamite language is much more difficult, but they got a lot of it too. So it was a very romantic thing, because the inscription was carved on a mountain face far above the plain. And Henry Rawlinson, who was a upstanding young British officer who claimed to decipher cuneiform quite unjustifiably, climbed up there with some miserable kid and made squeezes of the whole thing overlooking the plain, thousands of feet up in the air, and brought those back, and they were used in the decipherment. So it's very romantic.
Wait a minute. More controversial statement from Irving today. Henry Rawlinson doesn't deserve the credit for that?
No, I don't think he does. He's called the father of Assyriology, but I think he's the stepfather of Assyriology, because when he first got these inscriptions, he wrote a long book about it, which was almost entirely wrong. Mm-hmm. And there was a clergyman in Northern Ireland called Edward Hincks, who lived in a place called Killaloe and had 5 daughters and ran this church, who was possibly a card-carrying genius, if not jolly, jolly close. And what happened with him was this. There was an ongoing competition, an ongoing challenge to decipher hieroglyphic writing, which Champollion usually gets the credit for. And Hincks was very interested in trying to decipher hieroglyphic ahead of the French. And he ran into a sort of dead end at one stage, and he thought he'd have a look at cuneiform to see if it was helpful. And at the same time, he cracked it. He worked out how it worked. He realized that one sign can have more than one value of sound and of meaning, because they are multivalent, the signs. I tried to shelter you from the horrible news, but it actually it's not a walk in the park. It takes about 5 years to you probably do it in about 4, probably.
That is a compliment. I think you just complimented me. Thank you. Thank you very much. So you're saying one sign that looks exactly the same might have different sounds given the context?
Yeah, and you have to choose the right sound, and also a different meaning as well. Because, for example, if you have a sign for hot, word hot, right? You can't really have a picture sign for hot. It doesn't make sense. But what they did is they did a drawing of a kind of complex thing with a brazier inside another sign, which meant hot. So that sign existed, but it also meant other things as well, and you had to choose the right one for the context. It's all a contextual matter. I mean, it really is quite a matter for despair when you start cuneiform, because on top of everything else, they didn't leave gaps between the words.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
so they're all connected.
That's really mean.
Yeah.
So when you read, what you have to do, you start with the first sign and you think of the sign list and you go through the values in your mind, and there's next sign. And if one is bar and the next one is ab, among other readings, bar ab sounds like a syllable structure for a word, and you go on like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two things about it. One is that if you want to, you can master it. The other thing is that the number of variables was restricted. They controlled it, so it wasn't insane.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, if you learn the corpus and you learn how the signs are composed and you learn their different values, then you've got it down,
Mm-hmm.
and off you go. And it's very beautiful. I think it's marvelous.
Can you, in all seriousness, take me back to the time when you were learning it? What's the process of learning it?
Well, I had very abnormal upbringing because when I went to university, for about 3 years beforehand, I'd wanted to be an Egyptologist. So I'd read the grammar by Gardiner and was looking forward very much to studying ancient Egyptian. And what happened was that I went up to the University of Birmingham, where I went to university, and there was a man called Rundle Clark, who was an Egyptologist. And Rundle Clark came in on the Monday and gave us one lesson about Egyptian sculpture or something like that. And the next day he died. Bang. So the professor called me into his room and said, "Look, it's going to take me a while to get an Egyptologist. They don't grow on trees. But there's another person in this department who teaches another ancient language called Lambert, and he teaches cuneiform. So what I suggest is you go and do a bit of cuneiform with Professor Lambert, and then when I get an Egyptologist, you can convert back." So I go and knock on the door. "Yes." So I went in and said, "I want to learn cuneiform." And Professor Lambert, who was rather a Sherlock Holmes kind of figure, aesthetic, bony, sarcastic, cruel, absolutely terrifying. And I said I wanted to learn cuneiform, and he wasn't at all pleased, because this was a time in Britain when professors resented having students to teach because it butted into their research time. It was that sort of arrangement.
Yes.
Anyway, I started it off, and after about, I don't know, maybe 1 or maybe 2 lessons, I knew this was going to be my life's work. So that's what happened to me. It was an amazing thing. So he gave me a list of signs to learn, basic signs. So I did. And the next couple of days, and then we came in and we started reading.